Hello, and welcome to the Two Ball Brothers and a Microphone podcast. This is Danny Ryan, and I'm here with Tommy Ryan. How you doing, Tommy?
I'm doing well.
We're
People can now see we are bald. We just don't say that.
Yes. We're trying something new in the New Year's, folks, and that is we're going to try doing this on Teams and try posting out to a YouTube channel. And today we have with us, for the third time, Sam Marshall. Sam, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. Yeah, good to be here with you two guys.
We love having you on because we love your accent. We just you make us sound smart, Sam. It's just wonderful.
I sound like an extra from Game of Thrones, I know.
Yeah. Excellent. And how's your new year starting out for you?
Yeah, so far so good. I got a reprieve. I was meant to be on jury service for the first 2 weeks, which was soaking up a lot of time. They set me free after a day and a half, so it's almost like semi-holiday, having all this time that I didn't expect to begin the year with. So what better way to spend it than a video cast with you guys?
Right. With your two favorite ball brothers, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So what's great about these conversations, this is our third one of doing these, is just you've got I think very similar type of company to us, a consulting company. You're over in the UK. I think just through the years, gotten to know you and what you do, and it's just been great to work with you and hand off. I think so many clients come to us with questions about SharePoint Intranet in a box, and it's wonderful to hand them off to you and have you help them out. So we really appreciate that.
Well, no, it's a pleasure. It's a bit like client ping pong, isn't it? Because I get quite a few North American inquiries that we don't handle that go back over your side, so it's all good.
So have you ever heard of the Ryan brothers or this ThreeWill or Tree? Have you've heard of those guys from the Southern U.S.? You've probably heard of them, but I digress. So what I wanted to do in this conversation was to pick up. You've now done the fourth version of your report, your SharePoint Intranet in a Box report, and as Tommy,
wow. Nice. The printed copy.
Well, no, this is hard. This is the whole printed thing. It's so big.
Wow.
The printer said we can no longer bind this behemoth that you're shoving our way. So
and we appreciate the blood, sweat, and tears that you put into this thing to produce this thing, because it helps. Boy, I can't. It's almost. It seems like a full-time job trying to stay on top of what's going on within this niche of the marketplace.
It's very, very active, and every year I think surely we're kind of maxed out now in terms of the number of new products that will be launched, and every year there's probably been 20 launched in the last 12 months since last we spoke. So really active, and of course Microsoft pushing the boundaries all the time too.
Yep, absolutely. And this is going to be the wonderful part about this conversation is seeing where Microsoft's coming along and how the market is reacting to that. So let's jump into this. Within this is V4 of the report, correct?
Yes. So we started research in 2015 and we pushed it out early 2016. This is the 2019 edition. We've done one roughly every 12 months.
And you have, for this one, you're doing, it looks like 39 products, so close to 40 products, and 11 of those are new ones.
That's right, yeah. And then there's 17 where we do like a market summary. So we don't do an assessment where we score them, but we give like a kind of buyer's guide to what they offer. We're trying to kind of say, well, what are the ones that are likely to be on the short list of many people where you really need to differentiate? So for them, we'll do a long, like an expert evaluation. But often there are some players who geographically might make sense for you just because they speak your language or they know your business culture. They're not going to be a big market, but could be on the shortlist for a certain segment of the report users.
And you've got a voice of the customer, so starting to pull in what customers think and what their perspectives are on some of these products as well.
Yeah, so that's new this year, and I think you guys nudged me towards doing that, as well as other people saying it would be nice to see. So the idea of that in particular is that although we can evaluate how the product looks in a demonstration, can't be living with it for 6 to 12 months and really getting a sense of maybe some of the areas where they're going rougher or harder than you expected. Okay. But also what the vendors are like in terms of being a collaboration partner. And I've got to say, on the whole, there were some very, very enthusiastic customers. Some people really praised to the point where I thought, gosh, can I actually put this in, because it sounds like fake news, but we verified that they really were customers, and a lot of them we spoke to, or we emailed back and forth just to check them out, and yeah, so people are happy customers on the whole, which is good to hear.
That's awesome. And then we saw, I guess, over the course of last year, what's happening with Microsoft with communication sites and hub sites, those come along, and how does that impact existing products that are out there, and what's the market doing to react to those things that are coming from Microsoft?
That's really been Microsoft, I think, turning up the heat in terms of this sector. And it's put a lot of pressure on the vendors over the last 12 months. So particularly that shift over to modern, the origins, a lot of these products that did invested heavily in publishing sites, it's easiest to live with, and doing all the branding and so on top. And to heave all that over and recode it again to work with modern is a substantial effort. So although we've got 11 new vendors, we have also seen some products drop out the market. I think they just took a look and said, yeah, we can't afford to make that transition and still make money out of it. So, for example, they've become resellers of the bigger products rather than plowing on ahead with a new iteration of their own one. But beyond that, yes, some vendors have said, we like what Microsoft are doing.
Yeah.
One of the trends that I picked up on it, we called it light and lean, is that they're kind of slimming down their product and saying, we'll just fill in the gaps from what we know customers need from an intranet versus what Microsoft provide. And if we reach a point where Microsoft fill that gap with their own solution, then we'll pull our code out so you don't get duplication. And I think that makes a lot of sense for a certain sector of customers who see the long-term objective to become pure Microsoft, but don't want to wait maybe 2-3 years for that to be viable. So they're looking for a light and lean in a box solution that they can use as a transition, as a stepping stone to that endpoint. But then equally, there's just so many products saying, look, there's an awful lot that we don't think you'll ever be able to do without the box SharePoint. So they are much more substantial products that go way further than Microsoft ever would.
Yep. Yeah. This is a bit of a strange question, but where you were talking about it, have you ever seen customers go with multiple intranets in a box?
Or is it, yes, not always by design. Yeah.
Maybe they made a mistake with one and they brought another one in, or has it been? I'm just wondering, because the way you explained that, it sounded almost like maybe some would fit certain gaps and some would fit other ones.
Yeah.
But I don't know if we haven't seen that much, and a part of it is just seeing what you're seeing over in the UK versus what's happening over the US. Primarily, we're seeing a lot of people just go with one, but
yeah, there's a few scenarios. So one is, for example, you get multinational companies where different countries might have gone for different inner box products.
Yep. Yep.
And so long as they work pretty much autonomously, then they can coexist quite happily. Yep. But also some of the products like Powell 365, they have Powell Manager, which is much more a governance tool for controlling mass deployment of things like team sites and communication sites. And that would happily coexist with something where you bought it maybe for the news management or the editing environment. It's more an admin tool rather than a front-end tool.
Right.
Yeah. And then we were approached just this week by a company that had rolled out 18 months ago on top of one of the products which is now pulled out of the market. So unfortunately, they're going to have to replace it.
Gotcha.
That's why I say, look, a lot of what's in the report now is the kind of stuff procurement should be doing for due diligence, of saying, if we partner with these guys for 3 years, have they really got the revenue stream and the head count to keep the product going?
And if there's one, we probably talked about this last time, but if there's one thing we've learned as a services company, is we're not a product company. and it's a completely different business. Tommy, you should be shaking your head here, right? Yeah.
Yes.
There's a big difference between the two.
A lot of scars there.
There's scars. I wrote a blog post a while back, which was basically my biggest business mistake, and it really just has to do with Tommy and I invested quite a substantial amount of money into a product, and it takes as a services company, it's the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence, right? It's always that they're looking at us at, look at their bill rates and they can get people ramped up quick. And and then we're looking at them and we're looking at reoccurring revenue, and everybody's like, sort of like, I want that and I want that. And one of the really nice things in this report that I've seen is you cover like the business model. So even as a SI, this report is helpful to me to know sort of, was that company, what's the background on that company? Are they a pure product company, or are they a lot of these alternatives are, they're ThreeWill putting out here's our intranet in a box, and are they going to be around 3 years from now? Are they going to be around? Are they going to be able to support their product? Do they have the structures in place to support their product? So.
Yeah, so we categorize their approach. So some of them, I think what we talk about, we classify as accelerator. So the ones who come from like the SI background, who have maybe branded the code library, but it's not something where they can just go in there and everybody gets the same thing and you switch it on and 4 hours later you've got like the empty shell of an intranet. It's more, they talk about maybe a 3 months deployment, which has been shortened from what would have been a 6 months deployment because they have that accelerator code. So we also ask, what's the typical deployment time? That's another clue to what their approach is. If you say, yeah, we'll install it in 4 hours, then that's a pretty strong hint that really it is a product, and it's probably got a regular release cycle and a roadmap and all that kind of good stuff.
And you did, I don't know if this was in previous versions of the report, but you've got this nice, where you've got a column that's type, and I'm looking at it right now. So you've got a ready to run versus framework versus application versus accelerator, which that's a great, you should sort of, you've made it nice where you've sort of put them into these different buckets so that people can say, what are we looking for as an organization? Are we looking for something more out of the box, or are we looking for something that will get us there quicker, or what type of product do we really need?
Yeah, that's new this year because it's more technical than we originally had in our heads. I suppose when we wrote the first couple of versions, my mindset was maybe someone in internal communications wanted to do a bit of window shopping and then talk to the IT department. But what we found is an awful lot of people on the IT side are using our report to have that conversation too, which is great. So we put a lot more in to help them with their decision making.
Mm-hmm. Now, Sam, are you seeing any trends with the type of organization that you see that's entering into the market? Is it accelerators? You're seeing more accelerators, or more of the pure product play when it comes to Internet in a Box?
Yeah, it's more of the pure product, but also the framework side. So I think it is hard, as Danny says, to do the accelerator when you're also a services company.
Right.
And probably for the next 2 or 3 years, they can make good money by migrating from classic to modern as a service. But you get the scale from doing it on the product route, particularly the ones who have a partner model. So Omnia, Bonsai to some extent, Powell 365, Valo is a really big partner-based approach. Yeah, that's when you can really put money into innovating because you're not actually distracted by servicing the projects. You let your partners do that.
Yeah. We recently picked up someone from one of the Internet in the Box companies because they kind of doubled down into purely product and getting rid of their services side of their business.
But it's horses for courses, because a lot of companies we talk to, they say we don't want too many different contracts with too many different suppliers. So we would like someone who knows a product really well, but can also help us with the requirements gathering and help us with the branding and even help us with some of the launch communications. So it varies a lot.
The other thing, you've done the Intranet Choice Awards that you've done. Those were updated for this year as well. We were sort of starting to get into that. Any surprises there, or any sort of overall thoughts on what was chosen for this year?
I shouldn't be surprised, as I devised them, but
well, I guess when you chose them, you're surprised to see something that you chose.
And the winner is. So one of the categories.
Surprise yourself.
Yeah. One of the categories we had from last year to this year is Intranet Value one. So we do a kind of Gartner Magic Quadrant type analysis of cost versus capability. And there's a Belgian company called Involve that came out, and when I was reviewing it, I suppose I thought, oh, you know, this is a solid product, but it's only when you factor in the pricing that you go, wow, this is a lot of bang for your buck. So they're a new entrant. That was good. We also did a new category this year, which is an innovation award for companies that are just coming at this in a somewhat different way. So not just about, for example, news publishers that we really liked, because they actually built a mobile like employee engagement app first, and then moved into the SharePoint world. So they got quite a different lineage to most of these. And one of the things that they really thought through was, well, you got a lot of frontline workers, blue collar workers that don't even have an email address. How do you onboard them? Because the classic Office 365 one is, well, you just buy a whole shipload of licenses for all the frontline workers who never really use it. But no, with Sparrow, you can onboard through things like text messages to their phones without any need for an account if they're just going to be reading corporate news through an app, for example, which I thought was pretty nice.
We talked about this last time. The whole idea of, you know, number one, you can get overwhelmed by the number of products that are out there, and I think sometimes people jump ahead and they skip the requirements piece of this, which is you know, we have the same philosophy as what you've got within the report, which is this should all be driven off of requirements. It's nice that they, you know, these products have these different features. Don't get caught up into that. It's like, what does your organization need? And I think that's a really important thing that sometimes I've seen companies jump over that step, and they start evaluating products and not really understand the needs of their organization. You run into that very much at all, or?
Yeah, even though everybody's saying it all the time, it happens a lot. So people will say to me, okay, so you've done all these appraisals, Sam, but what's the best product? There is no best product. You know, it's like saying, when you go to a restaurant, what's the best meal, Danny? What is the best meal? It's like, well, depends what you need, you know, your particular circumstances. So there's no shortcut in doing your homework, because if you're not clear on your requirements, worst case, you buy the wrong product, but also you might just overspend and buy a product that ticks more boxes without actually buying things that are relevant to you. And you know, I often use the analogy, it's like digital workplaces it's like going down the gym with a bunch of athletes. So you could spend a whole heap on equipment that you'll never use because it's shiny and you feel you should have it, and everyone else seems to have it and everyone else is talking about it. But in order to get the performance out of your athletes, you also need to think through what's the program that we're going to use with them with this equipment. Because if we want a bunch of marathon runners, they're going to do an entirely different program to creating a world-class team of sumo wrestlers.
That's an interesting analogy.
Together.
Yeah.
And it's okay, you know, like you buy Office 365, you say, well, we've already got everything we'll possibly need. Well, no, actually, it's good to ignore some bits of equipment because it might be harmful or at least confusing for your organization. Work out what you're trying to achieve, what the program is, and then what equipment you need to deliver that program behind it.
Yeah, we're often talking with clients where trying to understand where are they from a collaboration standpoint. You know, are they in the walk, run, sprint? You know, if they're taking certain actions, you can throw things in front of them and heads explode, or they never get used, or you just really you have to think about where they are on the path of maturity as an organization, and then enabling them, you know, sort of the next step for them. Don't need to jump any steps. You just need to give them the next step along the path. This gets into, I think, the $1 million question, which is, do I go with, you know, because Microsoft has been making some investments around SharePoint as a platform.
Yeah.
And do I, you know, where is there an inflection point where you're seeing organizations sort of just go with trying to get the most out of SharePoint versus starting to introduce some of these products that are coming out, and that comes with there's overhead involved with that. There's a whole sort of dynamic involved with getting another party involved in building out your digital workplace. So it's like this whole Tommy and I are trying to stay on top of this and trying to help customers with this, which is make sure you're getting the value out of what you've got from Microsoft. And then we can look at gaps. We can look at what requirements are not being met. But where would you classify, where are we at right now with regards to what you're seeing customers do where they're like, no, we're just going to either hold off on an intranet in a box, or we're evaluating it, or where are people with that as we stand right now in January 2019?
We're starting to see some people trying to do it without any add-on product. Even a year ago, I think the argument was a lot simpler because people would see an out-of-the-box publishing site, show it to their stakeholders, and stakeholders would go, "Oh, that's ugly, fix it, it takes money, fine, but we need to fix this." Whereas now you can show them a communication site using modern web parts, and it looks okay. Mm-hmm. And that's made it a whole lot harder for in-a-box vendors to get the first toehold in the door, because although there is an enormous difference between what you can do with standard SharePoint and what these products add, it's not an aesthetic difference. It's 101 other gotchas that you'll probably encounter as soon as you start to scale up or do more complex things, particularly around information architecture, navigation. Multi-language is probably the simplest one to say, look, it's a non-starter with SharePoint. That's when you need an in-a-box product. But for many other things, my concern is that companies will start going somewhere down the road, and they'll start with an information architecture that goes, page, news, links, we're good. Finance site, documents, links, photograph ahead of finance, we're good. Really detailed finance policy, and they do the vertical bit. And it doesn't fall over because it works quite nicely like that. It's only when you say, oh, but now we want HR, and then we want to start doing Northern Territories and Latin America, and then you find the information architecture doesn't scale. So I always say to customers, well, if you want to try it with standard SharePoint, just create 20, 30 sites, whatever you think you'll need, empty sites that represent the structure of your destination intranet. And just make sure it all hangs together as you want. And test that bit, because it's the navigation, things like mega menus, things like what happens when you've got a lockdown site with restricted access that only some people can see, but you might want a menu item in the hub site above it. How's that going to work? And this whole thing about news roll-up, which is getting very complicated in SharePoint, but also massive potential to tie yourself in knots if you're not careful. That all needs a very strong pilot, I would say, before you can really decide, is this actually possible with standard SharePoint, or do we need an add-on?
And we've started to, this past year, we discussed this a little bit before we jumped on, where we've tried to transition over from, we've got experience with moving people from other platforms over onto Office 365, typically like the Jive. We've done lots of those. And really we've come to appreciate the importance of information architecture and really thinking through, especially with some of these larger organizations, because depending on the organization, some of them might have just sort of like a let's throw it out there and see what sticks type of mentality with things. We see this. I mean, this is we're consultants. We go in and see people's ugly things sometimes, and that's sometimes the way that their approach to the world. But then we try to have more comprehensive, holistic approach to this, where we're sort of like, let's talk about an approach to how do we do this, and let's talk about how we do this more like thinking. The little bit of time that you spend up front thinking through some of these things, how it will end it, like you're saying, well, let's build out these, we know we're going to need these things, and let's not stick with one department, but let's make sure we provide a framework for how we're moving ahead. It's just really important for us to do that, and just to be there as an outside company saying you need to be thinking about these things.
For sure, yeah.
What else? We could talk for hours about this stuff. I love these updates. I want to, before we jump off here, you've still got the executive summary report that people can download for free, correct?
Yeah, so it's about 40 pages, and it's a lot from the introduction. And one of the sweeteners we've added this year is a comparison chart that says, this is what you get from standard SharePoint, this is what Microsoft has said is on the roadmap, and this is what you may still need over a kind of maturity curve from typical to advanced deployments. And it took an awful lot of time to put that together, so I ummed and ahed about, do we give this away for free? But I thought a lot of people are going to be in those conversations now about, do we need this add-on or not? So I think, well, the feedback I've had is that people find that really useful in those early discussions. And then once you got some more confidence that you probably do, or you're on the fence, then then you'll get a lot of value out of the main report as well.
Yep.
So you can download that from our site. It's just a simple. All we want is your email address, your mother's maiden name, just your email address.
A little bit of DNA.
And you can unsubscribe.
Yeah, a little bit of DNA.
Yeah.
It's like, Sam, it's just like us. You're a little bit of a drug dealer, and you're just giving them a taste, right? You're just a little bit of
That's right, the gateway drug.
The gateway report here. It is very helpful. For folks who are listening, at a minimum, just go download that report. It'll also just help to justify you getting the full report as well, because I know I've pointed people to that. And the full report itself, download off of the Clearbox website, correct?
Clearbox.co.uk, yeah, you'll see a link on the homepage, and you can buy it with a credit card and get the PDF within a minute.
Excellent, excellent. Anything else you guys want to mention before we jump off here?
So, I mean, probably worth just touching on a couple of the other big trends. So one is we're really pleased to see multiple language support taking off in the last year, because it is very hard to do. And it's not just about maybe translating a static page. It's about saying we need to put out an announcement in English, French, and Spanish, and it's all going to go live at the same day. But if someone spots a mistake and you correct the English version, how do you manage that workflow of making sure the Spanish and French ones also get updated? So some companies have done that, also hooking a lot into Microsoft Cognitive Services now. So the best products will show you maybe the English version on one side of the screen, and then as you scroll the English version, it scrolls the translated version in parallel, which has been machine translated by Microsoft, and then you can go in and do your final bit of human translation polishing, which that's going to save so much time for companies that have wanted to manage multiple languages and not really been able to do it before. And the other trend that I really like, if you look at maybe Akamina and Matchpoint and Beezy, is thinking much more about the digital workplace as a whole. And a drum that I keep beating is saying it's not just Office 365.
Yeah.
Most organizations, your digital workplace, you maybe got SAP or Workday and Oracle and all these other things that people would say, this is actually, this is where I do my work. Emails that are a distraction, documents in SharePoint, nice, but actually my work happens in this transactional system over here of Salesforce if you're a sales guy. So we need systems that recognize that. And if we're ever going to have like the dashboard where people say, I want to start my day at this, they've got to have hooks into those other systems as well as into documents and what's happening on Teams and your email. And some of those products I mentioned are doing that now, creating those hooks and even creating, for example, actionable cards. So on the mobile app, you can request time off via a bot and it submits it through to Workday and it comes back on your boss's mobile with just an approved card. They don't need to log into any other system to make that happen. And that's really good forward thinking. It's not mature yet, but it's definitely going in the right direction and very clearly something that Microsoft isn't making a lot of noise about yet. So some good space for them to explore.
Awesome. Tommy, anything you want to add to the end?
No, just I've enjoyed hearing your dialogue between you two. It's been nice being kind of sitting on the sidelines here.
But chilled out on the sofa. Got a can of beer off screen.
You held my attention. I didn't fall asleep on the couch here.
Oh, so you're the
no, Sam.
For us. Go ahead.
Yeah, Sam, I appreciate what you're doing, the work there. I mean, the body of work there really shows the thoroughness of, you understanding the marketplace and trying to enable customers to make good decisions. And, that's the business that we're in too, is helping people make great decisions. And this, this body of work is something that we reference all the time. It's something that we think is valuable to our customers, and appreciate you putting all the work that it takes to get to this point. So thank you.
Well, it's great to hear. Thank you. And I'm glad it's helping people, because the more, just for me, I think a lot of work sucks. So if I can take the the painful bit of work away when it's just so hard to get that template, and let people focus on the work that they enjoy, which tends to be the more productive stuff, then we're all good. We're all winning with that.
Excellent. Well, this is a new thing for me, so I'm going to say subscribe to this channel. I haven't done that yet. So subscribe below. And then I will also be publishing, for folks who are listening to this as an audio podcast. Feel free to jump over to the ThreeWill website, and we'll have links off to our YouTube channel there. We'll also do a transcription of this, and we'll have all the links that we mentioned in this discussion as well. A link off to the report, a link to the executive summary, and thank you, Tommy. Thank you, Sam. Really appreciate you guys in this little Microsoft Teams experiment. I think it went well. So one last thing before I jump off. So you're going to be doing this yearly, so there'll be a V5 at the end of this year. That's the plan from here?
Always depending on how the market shapes up. But no, I think there'll definitely still be a report about the high-end ones, but I also expect quite a big shake-up again this year, and it's going to be another exciting set of announcements from Microsoft, I'm sure.
Who's Microsoft going to buy? I have to ask you that question, because I think I asked you last time. You're like, I have no idea. I have no idea. It seems like that's a bit of an inevitable thing, but they may or may not. But it seems like that's something that's out there as well.
They mentioned a company called ThreeWill or something like that.
ThreeWill,
throwing billions away. I think
a little expensive.
Now you're on YouTube. You're going to be the next Baby Shark. You'll be worth a fortune.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you everyone for listening.
Pleasure.
And have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.